DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book. We got a daily masterclass that you're listening to right here, and this is all under one umbrella that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is a question: do you have something to prove? You have anything you need to prove out there? The reason that I'm talking about this topic, actually, before I even get into that, let me remind you that I have a text line where I want you to text me, tell me the most valuable insight that you got from today's episode, the thing that anything you're going to do differently, any way you're going to think differently based on what you hear today. My number is 305-384-6894. Once again, 305-384-6894. Text me. So now, why am I talking about this topic? There was a couple weeks ago, there was a little spat, back and forth verbal spat happened through the media, social media and news media between Stephen A. Smith, who is an ESPN personality, very popular guy, and Russell Westbrook, who's a basketball player for the Washington Wizards now. Now, Stephen A. Smith said something along the lines of, hey, Russell Westbrook put up great stats in his last game, and he had put up these really eye-popping stats. And Stephen A. Smith said, however, who cares? Nobody cares about those stats. And then he went on to say, well, look, Russell Westbrook has always put up stats, and he's a great player. He complimented Russell's game, but he said, look, this guy's not winning. You're not winning. The purpose of the game is to win. You're not winning. Russell Westbrook's reply was much more of a deflection than really a response. And Russell Westbrook kind of changed the subject and shifted the conversation into the room of, well, look, winning the championship does not define me, is one of the things that he said. And he also said, well, I came up out of the streets, wherever he grew up at, and now I'm in the NBA, so I already won by making it to the NBA. And then he started talking about all the charitable things that he does off the court for people, outside of playing basketball. And that response made me curious. And I actually talked about it a little bit this was on Twitter, where I was responding to it. My Twitter name is @DreAllDay, in case any of you didn't know, any of you who happen to use Twitter. And then there was another situation where I saw a player who had been injured, came back to play, also an NBA player. And his first game back, I guess the news media asked him something, and his response was, all I saw was his response. And he said, I don't feel like I have anything to prove. Or he didn't even say feel. He just said, I don't have anything to prove. I feel good, I'm healthy, I'm going to do my thing, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this player who said that, this player also hasn't done too much winning when it comes to playing in the NBA. He hasn't won a championship, hasn't been to the championship round. And both of these responses got me thinking on this very topic right here, having something to prove. Now, the reason why the Russell Westbrook one specifically got my attention is because Russell Westbrook is a max contract player in the NBA, which means he's making the most money he could contractually make, or based on the collective bargaining agreement between the Players Union and the NBA. He's making the most money he could possibly be paid right now playing in the NBA. He is looked at as one of the star players of the league, and he has been for several years. He's a very entertaining player to watch. He puts up very impressive stats. And right now in the NBA, he's drawing a paycheck for playing basketball. So when he came out and said, championships don't define me, and he started talking about all the things he's done off the court that makes him a winner, quote unquote, it bothered me because I'm like, wait a minute, what if I'm the owner of the Washington Wizards, the team that Russell Westbrook plays for? I'm writing this guy a check for a good, significant amount of money however often he gets paid. And he just said to the media, championships don't define me, and I won already because I came out of wherever he came out of to make it to the NBA. I'm like, hold on, that's all fine and good, Mr. Westbrook, but listen, I'm writing you these checks to win basketball games. So for you to say you don't have anything to prove, he didn't say that in so many words, but that was, if you were to look at what he said and you condense it down into one sentence, I'm not misquoting the guy. He said, I don't have anything to prove because I've done all of these other things and I got all these other things going on and I succeeded in all these other ways, so championship doesn't define me. Listen, I 100% understand that when you're an athlete and it's only this one outcome that everybody is measuring you against, and this is something that sports fans do to athletes all the time in every sport. They do it in golf. They say, well, you didn't win the big one. You didn't win the major. They do it in tennis the same way. They do it in football or basketball. Hey, can you win a championship? Especially in basketball. That's the sport that I watch the most. You didn't win a championship, or they do it to coaches. So this gets done to people all the time. So I 100% understand the mentality of a Russell Westbrook, who's like, damn, they're going to try to hold that. No matter what I accomplish, people are going to try to hold something against me and say, all right, well, you didn't win a championship. And he has done a whole lot of other things. Guy's won an MVP award. He's been to the All-Star games, been on the Team USAs. He's done plenty of things, and he will be in the Hall of Fame of basketball. However, if you're playing in the game and taking a check, the whole purpose of the game is to win. And if you win all your games, you're going to become the champion. So for him to say the championship doesn't define me, I found that to be a deflection, and it just didn't sit right with me. If I'm a fan of the Washington Wizards, not even the owner, but if I'm a fan, I'm like, I don't want one of our best players. He's either the best or second best player on that team. I don't want him saying that winning a championship doesn't define me. Well, what are we playing for? What's the purpose of this season? Why are you playing in the games? If winning the championship doesn't define you, or winning the championship isn't important, which is he was downplaying the championship idea, what are you playing for? Why am I cheering for this team if our best player or our second best player doesn't see winning the championship as being an important thing? Now, again, he didn't say that in so many words, but if you listen to the full context of his answer, he started talking about all these other things he has achieved as if he's done all that he needs to do. Okay, look, I'm all good with that. If you feel like you've done everything that you need to do, it's all good, but don't keep taking my money. Don't keep taking my paycheck every 2 weeks if you've done everything that you need to do. Like quit. You done everything you need to do, then stop playing. I'll stop paying you, and I can get this money to somebody else. But let's get on the same page here. So that's what got me thinking about this topic. And what I'm going to talk about here today is not necessarily, doesn't have to be for an athlete. This could be for anybody out there. This question of having something to prove. And as I get into the context here, you'll understand that this is not necessarily about what other people said, because most of you who are listening to me right now, you probably don't work in a front-facing job where everybody in the world is watching your work every day, like Russell Westbrook, or even like somebody like Stephen A. Smith. You probably don't have someone of Stephen A. Smith's stature critiquing your game or having the potential to critique what you do at work every single day because he ain't watching it. So how can you take the same things I'm going to talk about here today and use them yourself? Of course, I considered that. And actually, that's the main thing that we're going to be angling for. So let's get into our points. The topic once again today is, do you have something to prove, or having something to prove, period. Point number one, if you're a competitor, and competition is everywhere. It's in the business world, it's in the sports world, it's just everyday life. And life itself is a business, no matter what you do. You always have something to prove. If you're not the defending champion at what you do, if you are not recognized across the world as the number one best at what you do, well, listen, you're playing to win the game, are you not? Aren't you playing the game to win? If you are it doesn't even matter what you do, whatever team you're a part of. If you do something solo, don't you want to be recognized as the best at what you do? If you're a teacher, don't you want to be voted or recognized as the best teacher there? Don't you want to be recognized and compensated as the best teacher in the school? I mean, why are you doing it if you don't want to be one of the best in there? If you don't want to get better, you don't want your game to improve. And this is not about other people. This is just about with you yourself, looking in the mirror, knowing what you're doing every day when you show up to work. You always got something to prove. If you are not the defending champ, then that means somebody out there is better than you. Do you want to get better? If you don't want to get better, why you listen to a show called Work on Your Game? I think maybe you tapped on the wrong show. You play to win the game. And every one of us is in a game. That's why the show is called Work on Your Game. You got a game if you're a teacher, if you're a student, if you're unemployed, you're an athlete, you're an entrepreneur. We all have a game that we're in, and I would assume that you want to win it. Now, if you are the defending champ, if everyone has already recognized you as the best, well, now you get to prove that you can defend the title, because when you are already recognized as the best, now everybody knows about you. Everybody's watching you, at least in your ecosystem, everybody's watching and knows about you. And they're all gunning for your spot. They all want to get that spot too. They want to be recognized as the best. So now they're looking at everything you're doing, copying it, and seeing if they can do it better. Now you got to defend that. That's even harder now because you got the target on your back. It's a little bit easier to get to the top when nobody is paying attention to you. It's a lot harder to hold on to it when everybody's paying attention to you and trying to figure out a way to beat you. It's you against everybody. So you always have something to prove on some level as long as you consider yourself a competitor. As long as you're a person who's always looking to improve, and as long as you recognize that you are in the game and you want to win. All right, if those three things are true, then you always have something to prove. Again, not necessarily to the Stephen A. Smiths or the Dre Baldwins of the world, but just to yourself. Because again, why are you even doing it if you don't have somewhere you want to go? Point number 2. The topic today is having something to prove, or do you, as a question, have something to prove? Point number 2, you might be wondering, well, Dre, and I'm going to counteract myself on this point. Some of you may remember this, but I remember it, so I'm going to bring it up right now. Dre, didn't you once say that you don't have to prove shit to anybody? And the answer is yes. I did once say that. You do not have to prove shit to anybody. I actually did a speech. This was at it's called the Click Z Live Conference. This was in San Francisco. What year was this? It's probably 2015 or 2016. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember giving a speech at this Click Z Live conference. And the topic was, you don't have to prove shit to anyone. And if you actually go back in the archives of this very show, episode number 17 is that very topic. You don't have to prove shit to anyone. So yes, I did say that. I probably got videos talking about it. I think I have a section in my book, Work on Your Game, where I actually talked about that. So I'm on the record many times saying you don't have to prove shit to anyone. So how am I going to sit here and have an episode that says you always have something to prove? All right? Aren't those in contradiction to each other? Yes, they are. But remember what I also told you about the difference between wisdom and knowledge. Is that knowledge is knowing that something happened. Wisdom is knowing when to use different pieces of information, even though they are in conflict with each other, which is good, because there are times in life to be quiet and there are times to make noise. There are times you have to prove everything. There are times you have to prove nothing. There are times to attack and there are times to fall back and retreat. So knowledge is knowing about all of them, and wisdom is knowing which one to use and which one not to use given the context of the situation. So there are a lot of people who are smart, or at least they think they are these days because they have Google and they can find something. Wise people actually know what thing to look for. And there's a huge difference between the two. This is really about asking the right question. All that said, yes, I did say you don't have to prove shit to anyone. But understand at this point, as I touched on in point number 1, this is not about you proving something to other people necessarily, if that's not really what you're about. Some people like having something to prove to other people. Other people don't like that. Apparently, Russell Westbrook didn't like the fact that someone was saying his stats didn't mean anything because he hasn't won a lot of games. In that context, at least, he was saying, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. But I bet, here's what I'll tell you. I bet if Russell Westbrook's team goes to the playoffs, which they may or they might not even make it given how bad they are this year, if they go to the playoffs and win the championship, I bet he'll have something to say towards Mr. Smith after Mr. Smith said, well, you're not winning even though you're putting up great stats. So I do think Russell Westbrook actually is inclined more towards the proving things to other people, but I think because he's not proving it winning wise right now, that he would rather deflect and put on the facade that it doesn't matter. But again, that's just my theory. That's not anything I heard from Russell Westbrook. That's not a reporter. That's not a report that I'm saying here. I'm just saying that that's my theory on the case, but it doesn't even matter because we're still here on the second point. It's not always about proving it to other people. It's about driving yourself and putting the pressure on yourself to deliver. I mean, isn't that worth something? Putting the pressure on you to just show up and do what you need to do in some situation in life, even when you already know, people already know you, you are already established and you're already accomplished. It's not about other people. It's really for you internally, continuing to push yourself. You can use this just as a way to push yourself, even if you are recognized as the best. You look at somebody like Michael Jordan, who was recognized as the best player in basketball long before he had won all the championships that he had won, but he kept finding ways to drive himself because he kept wanting to prove it over and over and over again. Now, Michael Jordan is a rare case. There ain't too many people who come along and been driven the way that that guy was driven, on top of the fact that he had game. But hey, this is a good example. You can strive towards that example even if you're not trying to be Michael Jordan, even if you never picked up a ball in your life. Putting the pressure on yourself to deliver. It's not about what other people say you got to do. It's about what you tell yourself you need to do. I heard Tony Robbins once say that with Michael Jordan, he was asking Michael Jordan or he heard Michael Jordan say this, and he said that Michael Jordan said, the thing about me is, yes, I have talent, I have skills, but I expect more of myself than anybody else expects of me. I drive myself harder than anyone else drives me. Now, is Michael Jordan his own biggest critic? Who knows? I never heard him actually use those phrases. But we talked about that, not being your own worst critic, back in episode 1785, just a couple weeks ago. It's driving yourself, pushing yourself. You could be your best coach. You could be your best accountability partner, without being your biggest critic. Those are two completely different things. So even when you're established, you can use the fact that you have something to prove to drive you towards doing what you need to do and getting your game out there for the world. It's for you. It is not about other people. Even though other people may see it, they may have something to say. It's really about what you say to yourself. It's much more important than what anybody else says to you. Point number 3, today's topic, once again, is do you have something to prove? I want you to remember that life is a battle, or you can recognize that life is a battle if you never thought about it before. What I mean by that is this. Life is a series of challenges to be met and a series of challenges to be solved, a series of problems to be solved. That's what life is. And if you look at life this way, what happens is your mentality changes to being someone who meets the challenges instead of seeing challenges as things that weren't supposed to happen in the first place. See, if you look at life as a series of challenges that you handle this challenge, now is another one. Now you got 3 you got to deal with. Now you got 5, now you got 2. All right, for 1 or 2 days you have none, now it's 3 more on the way. If you look at life that way, as a series of challenges to be met, then you're always ready to deal with the next challenge. You may not even know what the challenge is going to be or how you're going to handle it, but you're looking forward to the next challenge because you look at life as a series of challenges. If you look at life as something that's not supposed to have any challenges, you're not supposed to have any problems, then when you do have challenges and problems, because they are inevitable, when you're human, you're going to have challenges and problems. When you don't expect them or you don't want them to happen and then they do happen, now you're thrown off base. You lose your balance. You lose your sense of equilibrium because you didn't want the challenges to happen, or you have conditioned yourself to believe they're not supposed to be any challenges. So you look at any challenge or problem in life as an aberration. This is not supposed to be occurring. It's occurring right now, but as soon as it's done, I can go back to the life of rainbows and sunshine and having no challenges. That's not the way it works, folks. Life is a series of challenges. There's always another challenge coming. So what I'm suggesting that you do here is change your mentality to there will always be a challenge. I'm just going to figure out ways to deal with those challenges. Not there are no challenges whatsoever, and if one happens, then that's not supposed to be happening. Something messed up here. There's some kind of glitch. No, that's not the glitch. Having no challenges is a glitch. As a matter of fact, we call that death. All right, a person who has no challenges, we have funerals for those people. All right, we put their faces on T-shirts because they're dead. All right, everyone will always have challenges. If you're listening to me right now, is anyone listening to me right now that has no challenges right now in life? Exactly. By your silence, I'm going to guess that I'm correct. Everybody has challenges to face, so expect the challenges, meet the challenges, and defeat the challenges. Look at it that way, and you will always be driven to prove something, again, not to other people, but to yourself and, hey, to that challenge itself. And point number 4, today's topic, once again, is do you have something to prove? I'm often asked about motivation. People ask me all the time, Dre, how can I be more motivated, more driven? How can I have that motivation on a day-to-day basis? When people get into my text community at my number 305-384-6894, often we ask them, hey, what are you interested in? Or what are you looking for right now? And anytime somebody says mindset, I'm getting so many people who say something along the lines of, I just want to be more driven on a day-to-day basis. I just need to be more focused. I need to be more locked in. I have an idea of what I want to do, but I just got to get that energy to be more driven to do it. So how do you have more energy on a daily basis? How can you be more driven? Having something to prove is a vehicle for getting there. All right, this is a shortcut. Having something to prove on a day-to-day basis is a shortcut for being more driven. Whether you're proving something to other people, whether you're proving something to yourself, you're proving something to the world, or you just make up a story that you have something to prove. Might not even be real. You just made it up. All of us as human beings will push harder when we have something to push against. This is just the way that it works. If you try to push against air and there's nothing pushing back against you, well, you're probably going to fall over because you're trying to push something and there's no resistance. We can work well when there is no resistance in life, but the thing is, there will always be resistance. As I just told you, there will always be a challenge in life. There's always some problem that needs to be solved. And any of you who's ever lifted weights or done any kind of exercising, your muscles get stronger, not when there's no resistance. Your muscles get stronger the more resistance you deal with. The more resistance you deal with and handle and face down, and you prove that you can get through that resistance, your muscles get bigger, your muscles get stronger in the periods in between dealing with the resistances. That's every time you handle a challenge, you get a little bit stronger, your baseline is a little bit higher, the floor is raised a little bit, now you have a new standard, now you do it again, then you do it again, then you do it again. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Dre, that sounds like just a life of constant work. There's always a challenge, there's always some way to get better, there's always some way to push, there's always something that I'm going after and proving myself to. Is that what you're saying? The answer is yes. That's what I'm saying. If you're looking for a life of ease and comfort and not having to do anything, the easiest way to get there is to deal with as much resistance as possible and deal with it and face it down so that you buy yourself the time to not have to deal with any challenges. You can get there if that's the life that you want to live. You want to get to that point. What you're going to find, though, when you get to that point and you don't have any challenges, or at least you feel like you don't have any challenges, it's pretty boring. You don't have anything to do. The other thing about human beings is that we need something to do. We're called human beings, but we need something to do. When a person has nothing to do, they get bored, they become boring, and eventually they die because what are you here for? You're taking up space. You're taking up oxygen, not doing anything. You're taking stuff off the table, like oxygen and space, but you're not putting anything on the table, like what you're proving and producing and actually accomplishing in life. And this is not about what other people say about us. It's just you looking at yourself. Any of you ever been in a period in your life where you didn't really know where you were going, you didn't really know what you were doing, you didn't really know what you were working on, you weren't really driven to do anything? It's kind of hard to get out of bed on those days. It's kind of hard to get started those days. Like, hey, actually, why do you get started? You ain't got nothing to start. You ain't got nothing to do. We need things to do in life. So don't feel upset when you got a whole lot of things to do, or you got a lot on your plate, as we say. You should be happy when you have a lot on your plate. The worst place to be is having nothing on your plate and nothing to do, because that's when the higher spirit, the higher being, whatever you believe in, might say, all right, this individual right here ain't got nothing going on. Let me get them out the way so we can bring somebody else in who actually is going to do something. I think we should end it on that point right there. We get stronger when the muscles are taxed. Let's recap today's classes. Do you have something to prove? Point number one, if you're a competitor, and all of life is a competition, by the way, in case you didn't know, you always have something to prove. If you're not the defending champ, you got to play to win the game. And if you are the defending champ, you're proving that you can win the game again with the target on your back. And point number two, I'm the guy who once said you don't have to prove shit to anyone. That is correct. So these points seem to be in conflict, and they are. But understand, wisdom is you got to know which one to use at which time. This point is not about proving things to other people. It's about driving yourself and putting the pressure on you to deliver, even when you are known, established, and accomplished. It's not about what everybody else says. It's about what you say to yourself and continually pushing yourself, which is how you continually get better. Again, look at the examples of people who are known as great achievers and they have great accomplishments. It's not because they accomplished something one time. It's because they accomplished something and then they kept driving themselves to keep doing it over and over again. That's why they're looked at as great. Not because they did it once, but because they kept doing it even after everybody knew them. Point number two, life is a battle. Point number three, rather, life is a battle. It's a series of challenges to be met and problems to be solved. When you look at life this way, you are not thrown off when you face a challenge or a problem. You are actually excited because this means you're alive. People who have no problems and no challenges, we call them dead. All right, we talk about them in the past tense, like they used to be here. They're not here anymore. Everybody has challenges to face, so expect them, meet them, and defeat them. And number four, people often ask me about motivation, how to be driven on a daily basis. Having something to prove is your vehicle for getting there. Whether you're proving it to other people, if that's what you like and you want to admit it, you're proving it to yourself, you're proving it to the world, or you just make up a story in your mind. Each one of us pushes harder when we face against resistance, if you are willing to deal with the resistance. Now, some people crumble and fall apart when they face resistance. Some people get stronger and they push harder when they face resistance. The question is, are you willing to admit the fact that the resistance can make you stronger? Are you willing to deal with it and challenge yourself to handle the resistance? Or are you going to fall apart and crumble just because there's resistance? And that is a huge choice that you're going to have to make in life. I suggest you make it now before you face the next challenge. All that said, I want you to send me a text. Tell me the most valuable insight you got from today's episode. My number, once again, is 305-384-6894. Once again, 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.